Policy Analyst at the Center for Data Innovation, a think tank based in Brussels and in DC. And today I'm speaking to you from Brussels. Stay tuned for our future webinars. We will propose a series of those in the coming weeks. To make sure you stay tuned, do sign up to our newsletter. That will be the easiest way for you to find out. Today, we're here to discuss how the European AI community is responding to the COVID-19 crisis. Research networks and business communities around Europe are working together to harness the potential of AI to address the crisis. And AI has already proven effective to support the outbreaks, to support the crisis in China, South Korea, Singapore, many other examples. And Europe can definitely learn from these experiences. So some of the digital policies planned for this year, including on AI and data, may have slid down the priority list of policymakers. But the crisis further shows that not focusing on those policies would be costly. Our panel today will discuss why that is so important, and we will discuss the ways in which the EU and member states can support researchers and businesses developing AI solutions to tackle the pandemic. I will first introduce our two guests before we dive into the conversation. And as there may be some time for Q&As from our attendees, please go to slide.do as a participant and join 19-AI to post your questions. You can also tweet using our Twitter handle at Data Innovation. With me today, and thank you all for making some time, I have Emanuela Girardi, founder of Pop AI and member of the high-level expert group on AI of the Italian government. Thank you for being here. And Ségolène Martin, founding partner and chief executive officer at Quantify, COVID-19 solutions. How can AI and data already help in today's crisis, if you have any concrete examples?
Yes, sure. First of all, hi everybody, and thank you for inviting me. There are several ways in which AI can be useful for fighting this COVID-19 crisis. If we think about data, for instance, we can use AI technique to analyze data, the different kind of data. For instance, if you think about intensive care data, we can use machine learning and predictive models to analyze this data and to come out with some additional information, for instance, for doctors, for them to better assess triage or the different therapies that they can use. And this can be very useful in critical moments. There are, if we think instead about the epidemiologic data analysis, we can analyze all this data and use again machine learning technique to analyze this data and to forecast in a predictive way how the COVID-19 epidemic will spread around. So there are really several ways in which we can analyze data. Or if we go back, for instance, to the hospital, we can use scheduling models and optimization models to analyze the resources of the hospital and to give better information on how to use them and how to stock them and how to manage them. For instance, I'm thinking about bed or respirators or I mean, different kind of scarce resources in the hospital. So really, I mean, we can analyze any kind of data with the AI technique, and we can give very, very useful information, I think. Or if we think about the tracking system that we can use, we can analyze the data, mobility data of people, and we can identify how people are moving. And if we can identify some people who were infected, then we can use them to track the people they've been in touch with. And this is more or less the so-called the Korean model. Or we can also use this data then to sanitize the places where there have been infected people. So I think that, I mean, analyzing data with the AI technique is very useful. The problem is that most of this data, unfortunately, are not available. And so one of the main problems is that we need data, I mean, for analyzing them.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a very good way to start. Ségolène, did you want to add something to what Emanuela explained about how AI and data can be used to really help in today's crisis?
Sure. First of all, hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Edwin and the team for your invitation. Yes, I think there are many ways in which AI can be used, and it's quite fantastic to see now the reactivity, because this is also the topic of today, of the AI community, both public and private, to find solutions to really quickly help with tackling the problem. So what is quite striking is, for example, all the efforts that are being done and which are really important in terms of diagnosis. So, for example, using scans of lungs to be able to diagnose COVID. Well, these are pros and cons, but there are pros and cons in terms of the accuracy and so on. But I think it's quite interesting to see the use of deep learning in that case to have the diagnosis. There are every day new studies being developed using AI. For example, a new one that I saw yesterday that enables to spot factors in patients that are that may be developing severe respiratory distress. So, for example, the study found that an enzyme in the liver was a factor that indicated that the patients were at high risk. In terms of monitoring, of course, we see that data and AI, but there are two things here. It's about the use of data and the use of AI, but already there are a lot of efforts that are being done to help having a view of the evolution of the situation. I think some of you may have the dashboard of the John Hopkins open on their computer from time to time to monitor the evolution of the disease. And at in a more midterm horizon, because I think it's not going to be tomorrow, there is of course the identification of potential drugs thanks to AI to help cure the disease or at least treat the disease. And I think here, there are many companies. Of course, there are many types of possible interest linked to that that are racing to find cures or treatments to help solve the virus. What else can I say? Emanuela, you already spoke about the use of data and to track people and help ensure that the spread is monitored, and the effort in South Korea and Taiwan are quite interesting and to consider at European level. So yes, there are plenty of possible uses of AI. What I think is important when I look at all those things that are happening and all those people developing really good solutions is, okay, if we would be to use them at European level, how to ensure that we are as coordinated as possible. So it means indeed the availability of data, of good quality data, which is a huge problem, as Emanuela mentioned, but there's also, okay, how do we avoid that efforts are not dispersed and that we all go into the right direction, which is very hard to do, of course.
That's a very good comment, because it helps me to go to the next question, because I was going to circle back to indeed this lack of data as a potential hurdle in addressing the crisis. Emanuela, you're a member of Clara, which is the Confederation of Laboratories for AI Research in Europe. So it's a pan-European research network, and you're a leader of Clara's COVID-19 task force. And Clara has been particularly active since the beginning of the crisis. I'd like for you to maybe tell us a little bit more about this network, and especially more about this recent offer of support that you've sent to the Commission and member states, with the goal to leverage AI to help manage the crisis. What has led you to send this call?
Yes, sure. So Clara is an organization created by the European AI community that is focused on human-centric AI, and actually it aims to develop a sort of AI made in Europe, so a trustworthy AI based on European values. And we have already today about 3,300 supporters, mainly are researchers, scientists, technologists, and we have the best, most of them are, they won lots of awards. They are worldwide famous. And we have about 350 research institutes in 34 countries. So it's a huge community. It's one of the biggest community of AI in the world. So we have this huge community, and we were looking at the experience in China, in Singapore, in Korea, in South Korea, and we were thinking, we saw how they use the AI technology to support managing this crisis. And so we were like, we cannot stand still. We need to do something with this. We have this potential that we can help, and we need to do something. And so we started thinking about what we could do, to exploit this network of AI scientists. And so we said, okay, what we can do is that first we can offer our support to European governments. And we have this huge expertise. And so we started sending out a letter to all European governments. And then we said, okay, what we can do is that we can start launching a call. So we launched a call among our community, and we have today 100 volunteers with the research institutes. So it's basically 1/3 of European AI community that replied to this call. And so we have, lots of people who are willing to help. So what are we doing actually? And also we ask ourselves, what can Claire do, in this moment? So as you said before, there are lots of initiatives going around already, in the AI community and around the world. But there is a lack of coordination of all these initiatives, because most of these initiatives, for instance, they are local initiatives. So there are a bunch of data scientists all working together with the local hospital, developing program or models or solutions. And so what we are doing with the Clara community, we are collecting all these initiatives. We are evaluating them, assessing them, and we are disseminating the best one to the other European countries. And I think that this is very important, because it's the coordination role that is needed in this moment to find all these different initiatives and to spread them around, to spread the best initiatives on one side. On the other side, since we have this, world-leading expertise, across all the different spectrum of AI, so what we're doing is that when we find an interesting project that needs support, we have these volunteers that jump on board and they give support on developing the AI project. And I think this is also very important in this moment, because we really need, to work all together, to fight this crisis.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. You also mentioned the importance, of the importance of data and how to make best use of it. Do you think there could be more done from the Commission side to ensure data is better shared, or there is more access within the community and across different communities?
Yes, I think that data availability and data sharing is quite a big issue at the moment. If we think about the European data strategy recently published, it's all about how we can collect data, we can stock data, and we can share them. So I think that there are different issues. First of all, we need to collect data, because most of in several fields, not only in health. We're talking now about health, but in the European data strategy document, they identified 9 verticals, and in each of these verticals, we need to start collecting data, and we need to identify some data space, and this is very important, because also the infrastructure on where we share data is very important. For instance, very important is very interesting is the project that they're developing in Germany, Gaia-X. This is this cloud infrastructure to start, to share data, to stock data and to share them. So first, we need to define standard to start collecting data. We need to stock them, and then we need to start thinking about we can share data. And so the data sharing agreements, I think that is probably the next big point that needs definitely further developments, because there are lots of examples of data sharing agreements around the world. But honestly, I still haven't found, a single solution that it's already working well. So I think that for this European creativity, probably can be very useful, and also the experience and the GDPR experience as well is very useful. And so we need to define our own, data sharing agreement structure. There is, in this field, the most important, the most interesting example that I found is a data sharing agreement proposal that is it's been developed by the ODI, the Open Data Institute, the UK Open Data Institute, and by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They developed this project that it was in agricultural field. So basically it was to give support to the farmer in India and in Africa to start collecting their data, managing the data, and sharing the data. And they identified this structure that is it's a sort of a checklist, very well done, because it's a list of questions at the end, and it raises the right issue, and it poses the right questions, like, I mean, which kind of data, how do you collect them, how do you share them, and what do you do after you share them, how do you control them? So I think that this is a very good starting point for sharing data to me. And it's available, I mean, for everybody. So it could be a starting point, I mean, from which to start for defining like a European model. But we definitely, I mean, I think that we definitely need a European data sharing agreement that can be then applied to the different verticals.
Thank you, that's very interesting. And Ségolène, my next question is to you, but of course, if you had a reaction to what Emanuela said.
Indeed, yeah. I think what is important to realize is that we are currently living in a space, as we already said, and in which all the countries are differently collecting data. There are some issues in terms of the data that is being collected, the quality, and so on. And if we want to fight what is happening now, it's really hard to do without data. I think it's really a really important message, and because you cannot fight what you cannot measure. So in terms of data, there are several things to do, of course. But what could be said about it is that we are in a space in the European Union where different countries are setting up different measures. And you could see that as all these measures can help us to better understand what works and what doesn't work. So if we would be able to have data to understand, to really monitor in a really good way what is the evolution of the spread, who has been tested, who is infected, what are the measures that are being done, it would really help the member states individually, but also collectively, to be able to do to understand what works and what doesn't work, and find perhaps like a way to do data-driven policy making. And of course, so far we are a bit far from it, and it's fully understandable because I mean the virus has taken everyone by surprise, and member states are trying to cope with the situation. But if we step back a little bit, there is also an opportunity, also knowing that the virus is perhaps not going to stop in 2 months. It may come back, to understand really, okay, as a member state, I'm doing a series of actions, depending on a series of variables, what works and what doesn't work, and what should I do to optimize, for example, whatever I want to optimize or mitigate the spread of the disease, decrease the death, and so on. So really, in terms of policy making, perhaps we could consider that the European Union as we see there are some issues between member states in terms of how everyone is tackling the disease, and one for example the issues between Italy and the Czech Republic, I think, with the masks and this kind of stories we hear. So the coronavirus is having a big impact on the balance of the European Union, but we could also consider that there is an opportunity for the European Union to really show, okay, we are living in a live experiment. We are all producing measures which leads to data, and we could use this data to be collectively better and use those differences to find what is the best solution depending on the series of factors. And I think, yeah, to do that, again, we go back to the same starting point with data. So it is indeed a key question.
Yeah, and I think that the difficulty maybe in this is that, I mean, we keep on hearing that, but healthcare is not necessarily a competence of the EU. So member states are leading the charge separately and a bit in silo, as you mentioned, when tackling the crisis. I know that there's been several encouraging initiatives on the Commission side. So they've launched this AI robotics versus COVID-19 to generate and collect ideas on how, you know, AI and robotics could tackle the pandemic, to have this repository of solutions and initiatives really accessible for all. So there's, you know, more can always be done, of course. So I'd like to get back to you, Ségolène, about, you know, what you do at Quantify, because it's also interesting to know a bit more of how you see things in your work. And maybe you could tell us a little bit more about your company and this model that you've recently developed to predict the spread of the COVID-19 disease, because I think it's a very concrete example showing how, you know, European businesses like yours are really developing things quite quickly.
Yeah, thank you. So yes, Quantify, we are also based in Brussels. So we are neighbors, even we cannot be in the same room today. So we are a startup specialized in developing AI solutions. So we had announced in 2019 work first in the field of predictive health or AI for health in the field of cardiology. So so yes, we basically what we have a special, yeah, we were monitoring already the spread of the coronavirus from the early start, what was happening in China, and we had already the conviction that it would come. So we were prepared. So when it happened, we were not surprised, but still, well, we spoke about it actually a while ago, yeah, for another thing. So when it happened, we weren't surprised, but at the same time, we thought, okay, we had seen it coming. What is the way we can help, perhaps putting our skills in action to help tackling or at least understanding the disease? And so we decided to develop basically a model, an algorithm that can that uses all the data, most of the data available about the spread of the disease at the world level, to be able to predict how the disease would spread from 1 then to 3 to 7 days in the future from one country to another. So the difference with more traditional, if I may say so, epidemiologic models is that we are not only using data about the number of infections, for example, the total population of a country, and so on, but we are really enriching this data with a lot of other data. For example, the proximity between countries, the type of government, the nature of quarantine measures, the age of the population, gender balance, so many other variables. So it's only a start. It could go further, of course. And we quite quickly developed a model. So one engineer in our team to be able to really be quite accurately to predict from first 1 day, then 3 days, and 7 days, and it could perhaps be expanded in terms of time horizon, the exact spread of the virus. So we had the error rate is really quite low. And what was like for the anecdote, we also gave to the model a study, which is it's not a study, it's the Global Preparedness Monitoring Board to Pandemics, which is a study by the World Bank, and basically in this study, the US score first in terms of preparedness, and our model didn't pick up on that. So there was basically a discrepancy between the study and what our model was predicting in terms of how the disease would spread in the US, and we see it's indeed spreading very, very quickly, and unfortunately. So it's an example of how machine learning, and perhaps even if we have some experience already in the health sector, so we had this experience in the field of cardiology. We work with the health companies to help them use their data for their kind of applications. So an example of how like a machine learning team can really have new ways of tackling the situation and having new insights in the situation. Because what we can do with this model, so it's also what we could do, rather, it's use that to understand what are the key variables to play with to really decrease the spread of the model or reach certain objectives. So, so it's quite like a potential. It's a nice example, I think, of the potential value of machine learning in the current crisis, in the context where, okay, it's difficult to know what to do. So it's difficult to have visibility on how the situation is going to evolve. It's difficult for governments, for example, to know what to do and which measures to put in place and what will be successful or not. So this is a way in which AI can help. So yeah, this is what we have done so far. So what we see is that we are not only active in health. So we started our health activities quite recently, basically, but we are also active in predictive analytics for the private sectors, and the companies are, of course, interested in this model because it's also helps to have a bit of visibility in a context where no one has no visibility. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
Yeah, actually, I have a question about how easy or difficult it is for a startup like yours to really, or smaller entities to really claim their spot and retain attention for the work they produce at the moment, because there are many open access, open source initiatives. There's COVID-19, I think it's the Allen Institute for AI's initiative with research groups. There's Vodafone and the University of Southampton. They have a dashboard to help governments model, the propagation of COVID. There's also MIT making research papers on coronavirus available. So how really can you ensure that you get support? How is the government's response to your work? If that makes sense.
So far, we had more response from the private sector than from the public sector. So we of course, we decided to do that because we wanted to, in a way, help and see if it was possible to do it. So our position as a startup is that we have other work to do. So we can use our resources to do other work, but we would be happy to help if we can help. So our model, it exists. So we have reached out to a few decision makers to say it exists. But of course, we are not the MIT or any of the other organizations you mentioned. So if there are other teams that are equally prepared and quick and having good results, that's perfect for us. We don't need to be involved. We just want to give a hand, and I think this is something I can feel. But this is what Emanuela has shown as well in the research community. It's also something I can feel in the startup scale-up community, the tech community in general. Is that we are here. We have great brains. We have the possibility to go very, very fast because it's something that startups have to do, so they're prepared to do. We have the possibility to go to the point. We build MVPs, so minimally viable products it's something we have to do to concentrate on basically what are the key requirements for a given tool, a given situation. So there is both the motivation, the willingness to help in a context that is hard for everyone, and also the brains that are here also to help. But then if there are other solutions that are equally good, It's perfect for us. But again, it's not like the life and work continues. So we have other work to do, but if we can help, we would be, of course, really happy to do so. Because, for example, in the case of our model, and I'm sure there are other people or that develop other solutions in other fields that are very, very good as well. It's here. It's of extremely good quality. I think it can, of course, be deepened, but it's basically ready to be. It's ready to be helped, to be used.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you're talking about how the startup community is willing to help. I also think, you know, this is the opportunity for the EU to fast forward the development of critical systems and to really try to get any opportunity they can get, especially in the context of trying to reach ambitious objectives to catch up in the data economy. I mean, there's a series of policy proposals for digital that still are, you know, important to stay focused on, and that goes hand in hand with the ability of businesses to really be able to successfully market their innovation. So you're saying that you know, startups are willing to help, but what could help you as well develop innovative systems quicker, especially in critical times like this, but in general? I mean, is it policy, certain policies, funding, and again, access to data? How can we help your community?
For coronavirus, you mean, or in general?
Could be for the COVID, so in urgent times like these, but also in general.
Yeah, I think that what is useful, what would be useful in the current situation. And I think there are efforts in this direction already, is to have a view of what are the needs. Because as I mentioned at the beginning, okay, there are plenty of things going on already. Efforts are, like every country is doing stuff and very interesting projects. So knowing where there are gaps, knowing where, for example, a company or a team such as ours could help, for example, in terms of bringing together the data in certain areas to bring together efforts. It's just an example, but would be really useful. Data, of course, is I mean, it's a must. It's a must. The availability of quality data. I understand it's hard to do. The context is we have to act fast, but this should be one of the core priorities. And then more generally, how can the EU help with AI and the AI context? I think funding is super important. Funding not only of large organizations and large technology organizations and large technology laboratories, but also smaller, faster, I don't know, but smaller tech players that have good ideas and the readiness to go very fast. A clear regulatory context. I think we have GDPR. Whether you like GDPR or not, it has the advantage to be quite clear. And for companies such as ours, it's something in which we can develop applications quite well in many areas. And I think in the field of health, you have to. There are some certain questions in terms of how you are able to market health-related products or services in the field, for example, of the medical device regulations. So it's not always easy for health companies to know how to best to set up develop their models, so it can be easily marketable in the future. So this is something that is perhaps easier for larger organizations than for smaller organizations. But there is, I think, a certain reluctancy or fear of, okay, I develop something, how can I ensure that it will be accepted and by the regulatory authorities in my country, for example? So the EU has a role to play, that's for sure, and that's a good, that's a hopeful message in the current context, right?
Thank you. Yes, there was this medical device regulation you referred to. I think it's been somehow postponed, just to make sure, to keep things easy as easy as possible. I'm turning to our participants' questions now, because there are quite a few interesting ones. And one is directed to you, Emanuela, but maybe Ségolène, you can also chip in, as to what would be needed concretely to improve that access or availability of data. And another question which I can ask both of you that our participants posted was how to ensure the protection of personal data when we use AI applications. So maybe Emanuela, you can start.
Yes, I think that one very important thing that has to be done is to invest in education, because I think that okay, we need data, so we need data availability, as we already said several times. But the point is that we need policymakers, people, doctors who are able to use and to work with data. And so this is really, I think it's a wider problem, it's a cultural problem, and we need to invest in education of people, in education of research, of doctors, so in school and in research. So really, this is probably one of the major points that we will, that policymakers will have to think about, because we really need to create digital Europe. You need also digital citizens, and to create digital citizens, you need to educate them. And this is, I think, one really focus point that we need to take on and to start working on that at every level. So in public organizations, in governments, in companies, and in schools as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And as far as the ensuring the protection of personal data when using AI applications, what are your thoughts on this?
I think that, okay, the GDPR is, I think, is protecting us pretty well. The problem, I think it's, again, it's a problem of education of people, because then we can have GDPR, but then when we use all the, this service app, we just, give consensus to use all our personal data. And so basically, while GDPR would be protecting us, we say, okay, that's fine, but you can use and elaborate my data. And this is also interesting, because today we're talking about giving to the government the possibility of tracking our personal, using and our personal data and tracking our movements. And which I think is a very critical point. But on the other hand, every time, every day, we use a app for fun, just or a game or something, and we just, give all these, service provider the possibility of using our personal data without even checking them. And so I think that this is, again, a matter of education. So we should really teach people and raise awareness about, what the value of our data, and what these companies could really do with our data, how they can influence our behavior, and how can also manipulate our behavior. This is a very important point for me, because it's a matter really of of educating the population on the risk of not of AI application, because it's not a matter of AI application. It's the risk of sharing our personal data. So we can still then be willing to share our data, but we need to know what these companies are really doing with our data, and this is very important.
I have another question, jumping to you, Ségolène, on potentially. But I think, Emanuela, maybe you can chip in as well. Would you see a need for an EU AI data lake to gather relevant data to be used for future AI research?
It depends on what. So here the scope of the question it can be very large. Is it like for any AI application? Is it in the field of coronavirus? I think what would be useful in the current crisis is speed. So so the question should be, I don't know if anyone at European level, perhaps Hélène, is asking themselves this question of how do we ensure that we can have we can gather qualitative data as fast as possible. I don't know, but this should be, for example, I think in the current context, one of the priorities. And then, so should the EU build up an AI data lake or for the EU or the research community to use, why not? But you can, I mean, we have to ensure that there is, I mean, these kind of projects could take time, and this should have a scope as well. So where are what are the responsibilities of the European Union, and how could such data help the EU? I think we have some data that is currently, for example, in other areas gathered by Eurostat. There are some projects around open data already. So there are some activities and initiatives around data sharing. But regarding to the current crisis, yeah, there should be really this questioning, I hope, at high level in terms of, okay, data has become, in the current crisis, like a necessity. So how do we ensure, even if the EU doesn't have any competence in terms of health policy, so it is a competence of the EU member states to define the health policy, but the EU can act as a facilitator, you know, even and the facilitator that puts up a measure that puts everyone around the table to gather the data. Perhaps currently everyone is just trying to extinguish the fire, so it's not the right moment. But perhaps after there is this accalmie that we all are hoping for and expect, there will be like a momentum to say, okay, we expect the coronavirus to come back. Perhaps it could be another pandemic as far as possible in time. But how, as a group of member states, can we ensure that we put our difference, we transfer our difference into like a strength that can help us understand how to tackle this upcoming crisis. And as I said before, I think it's we can see that as an opportunity for the EU, or perhaps like a reduced group within the EU, the ones that are ready to go into that direction.
Yeah, and I think something that can be raised is really how the importance of sharing health data over EU borders into something that's common, this common public data space for healthcare. It should be something that can overcome interoperability, and data localization issues, and really ensure the citizens and companies can trust that system. And that also requires the harmonization of laws, because, as for instance, we have the GDPR, there's diverging interpretation still between member states, and that is leading to problems of legal uncertainties for many companies. I have to wrap up in a couple of minutes, but I have a final question for both of you. So depending on, you can answer both parts of the question. I would like to know from each of you, from your own perspective, what are some of the preliminary lessons that we can draw from this situation? What does that mean for Europe's AI and data preparedness and its policy strategies, and really what should be the first line of priority?
I can start. I think that one of the first thing that we should do after the crisis is past is that we probably need to create a European AI coordination center. I mean, in the white paper, they were talking about a lighthouse for AI research. And I think that this is teaching us that we really need it, because in this moment, probably, I mean, we could have much faster have coordinated and developed all the activities on AI technologies, or all the initiatives that they are developing. So we really need the coordination, a center of reference where the national governments and EU governments can go and talk in situations like this. And this, I think that it's really what Clara is trying, I mean, to do and to build up. So this is a very important point. Then second, I think that we should really invest in research. This is very important. This is teaching us that we need to invest in research, and we need to be ready for the next epidemic that will probably, unfortunately, I mean, like Ségolène said, it will come. I mean, we were saved by the other epidemic that hit Asia, but I mean, probably this is not the last one that we're going to have. Third, as we talked several times, we need data. I mean, we need to make data available, we need to collect them, and we need really to spread the culture of using data. And this is very important also, not only for the research community, but also for industry and companies, because I think that this situation is teaching people how important is working with data, how important is to analyze, to collect data and to analyze them. So I think that this is really the last point. I mean, we need to start working with data, and the company will start doing it as well, I think.
Thank you. Ségolène, over to you.
Yeah, I would like to refer to the picture that you may have seen recently, which is the exponential, I don't remember exactly, but the exponential increase of the people that are becoming expert in statistics and data that has been shared by Elon Musk, for example, yesterday. So I think, yeah, everyone is sharing, and everyone know, but the people that are really looking at the monitoring the COVID-19 are quite visible and heard, and perhaps there is an interest. There is like a momentum as well to say, okay, data is important. Data gives us a reading of a situation where we don't know much. So there is an opportunity to go further. And I like the idea of Emanuela regarding the putting together the AI skills and talents, both research-wise, but also perhaps with some private brains as well, to see, okay, if this would be to happen, either this crisis or another crisis tomorrow, how can we use the resources and the talents in a more effective way? So this is quite promising. I think there are some initiatives that are existing that could be at European level that could be used. And for me, this need of coordination, as I was saying, is really important. I won't repeat what I say, but for me, really, there is an opportunity now around the data to use this situation to be more data-driven in the way we do policy making. And yes, as the COVID-19 is accelerating the digital transformation of companies very much, this is what we see these days. Perhaps it could also accelerate the digital transformation of policy making. And let's take this as a message as well of encouragement, at least to the public authorities.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you, both of you, Ségolène and Emanuela, for making the time and for this very interesting conversation, insightful conversation. And thank you all for joining us as participants. And we stay in touch with you in the next few weeks with more such conversations, and wishing you all a great day. Thank you so much again.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Bye.